So here is an up close on the island shiplap and just a couple things I have left to do. So last night I filled in a couple nail holes that I did just to push in. It was kind of bowing out a little bit, and that's what you're gonna get from using wood, kind of pre-cut, prefab shiplap type walls. You see how kind of the wood bows. That just happens to wood as moisture evaporates from it. So that's why it's super important when you go and you buy the wood that you take your time and you pick out the pieces. So last thing really left to do is to trim, paint, touch up, and caulk. So you can see on the island that you have this little tiny piece that juts out a little. I've got to get some quarter round and put that in. Since the shiplap goes all the way to the floor, the molding needs to be longer here than it was before. So this is new. I got to get a new piece for that. And then up here, there was some trim molding that went around. I have to get a new piece for that and extend this out. And then what I have to decide is how I'm gonna finish this off here. Definitely don't wanna leave the exposed wood only because the variations in the bowing and the cupping of the wood, it just doesn't look good. So if you get prefab material that's man-made and it's a lot straighter than this, you could probably get away with not doing anything to the ends. But for this one, we're gonna take and put probably like a small piece of trim right here, only because we didn't take the shiplap all the way around. Just gonna put a little piece of trim right here and finish it out. Maybe like a 1/2 inch, just straight piece, something similar to this right here. This is its own trim piece as well. So one thing that I noticed that I've never noticed before is if you look at the floor, you got probably a 1/2 inch of variation, and it's mostly because of the molding. So this whole side panel is flush with where it meets the drywall. So this is cabinet, this is drywall that finishes off the front of the island. Well, if you come around here, for some reason, and this just could have been an error when they built the island, this piece actually sticks out further by about a 1/2 inch on this end. So you notice on the other side I didn't have any molding on the bottom, and on this side I do. So what I have to do is again get another piece for this to finish this out, extend it out. Same thing for down here, but for this, since this piece wasn't damaged when I removed it, all I'll have to do is add that quarter round, and then of course finish it off. Over here, you'll notice too that you've got some gap here, and again, that's from cupping and bowing of the wood. It just isn't straight all the way down. So keep that in mind if you want to go with real wood. It's important that you pick through it and get good pieces. If I had to do it again, I like the real wood because it definitely gives more character, and if you're going for character, wood is the way to go. If you're going for it to be very clean and neat, you may want to go with like a PVC or MDF. MDF is really good because it's super flat and super straight, and it's really easy to work with. But I like the real wood. Just to go through some of the installation, I didn't use any glue at all on the back of the shiplap. I only used 1-inch nails, and then like I was showing in some of the pictures, I just nailed into the recess portion of the shiplap. So all that's left to do is to go in and do some sanding. Had some cracks on some of the molding. Just gonna sand that. I've filled it with wood filler. Gonna sand it and then paint, and then it's all done. Haven't decided if I want to go with some type of water-based sealant on the outside. This shiplap is going to take a beating because our stools sit right here, and I mean, people kick the wall. So I don't know if sealant's going to help that at all. Maybe just put some wax over it. I don't know. We may just be resigned to touching it up with paint every 6 months or so. It would be the same as if you had drywall there. You would have to touch it up to keep it looking decent anyway. I think the wood kind of helps that, protects that side of the wall. So I will post more pictures once I get all the trim and molding put in. But this is it so far. Okay, so to finish out this side piece, I've decided I think this is a 1-inch just wooden trim piece. It has like a round over profile on one side, and then one side is flat. So what I'm thinking is I'm gonna take and put the round over profile on the edge like that. Or it's gonna finish it off something like that. It's just gonna go up to the molding on each end, and I'll scoot it forward a little bit to hide that end cap. So it'll stick out a little bit on the ends, and that's necessary to cover that bow. And again, I could probably push it in a little bit more with a longer nail. I may do that, I don't know. But you can see the cupping, which is, you see the wood grain here, how it goes like this. As the board loses moisture, it will cup in the direction of the grain. So you can see it's kind of like a U. It follows the grain. So as moisture leaves the board, it just naturally cups. Now there's things you can do with planers and things like that that could fix this, but then you'll have a different thickness on each one of the boards. Now what you can do is, if it works out, and this is what a lot of folks do that make tables, you alternate grains. So we have a U going this way, we have a U going this way. And what that does is, as moisture leaves the wood, it pulls against each other so that it naturally conforms and helps keep pressure working against each one of the boards that keeps it flat. And that's one little trick you can do to kind of help over time, because these boards are not dry. And you can tell when you go to the store, because one will be significantly heavier than the other. So if you get a piece of wood and it's very light, then it's probably pretty dry. If you get a piece of wood from the same pile and it feels almost like a different type of wood because it's so heavy, it's because the wood has more recently been cut at the mill and it's got more moisture in it. So the tree was more recently cut down, and they shipped it, and it's just a more recent cut. So that's one thing to think about as well. So one trick when you're doing molding is to caulk and sand and finish and everything before you paint. You don't want to paint and then caulk, because then you're not going to be able to touch things up as good as you could otherwise. So what I'm doing now is I'm going through and I'm just caulking all the seams. So anytime you see, like, if you look right there, see that little spot right there where it's kind of open? Paint will cover that up. But what I want to do is just put a little bit of caulk in there just to seal it up a little. And then, so if you see up here at the top where you got this gap here and where it's got like a little seam right there, just one trick is to get like a wet paper towel and kind of moisten your fingers up a little bit, because since this is water-based, it won't stick to your fingers that way. So cut your tip at an angle like that, just enough to where the caulk comes out, and not too much. So push it up at the corner of the seam, just like that, and just real tight against what you're caulking. Just run a bead down through there, and don't worry about if it doesn't get all the way in the corner, because you're gonna fix that in just a second. So just run it all the way down, just like that. And then take your finger, wipe it on the towel, and then into the corner, and just real tight, run it down the seam, just like that. You're gonna have a lot of leftover at the end, which is why it doesn't matter if you get it in there. So you see you got like a couple spots. Let's go back over it, just like that. And go back, check it, see there's a spot there. Just take it one more time. You don't need a lot of this. Just the idea is just to fill it in. So usually you just go back over it just like that. Now, so you see you got like a lot of extra there. Take your wet towel and just wipe it off. You don't want a lot of extra caulk. So then you got a real bad spot up here. Same thing, start in the corner. Just run your caulk through there. And then take your finger, just make sure that it's wet, and then see, quite a bit extra, that's okay. You want to fill in all the seams so that it looks nice and uniform. Now once you paint, all this is gonna cover up. You're not gonna see like 90% of the imperfections. That's why when you run your bead of caulk first and then paint, end up with a much better end result. So the trick is, as with most things, less is more for sure. So I'm not gonna caulk up here because there's no point. The next time somebody looks at that area underneath is gonna be when someone's replacing this trim. It's pointless. Matter of fact, just to give you an idea of how pointless something like that is, when we bought the house, there was a piece of trim under here, but nobody painted it. It was just the primer. And I didn't notice it until I was working on the wall. So don't worry too much about all this section up here you're not gonna see. It's not a big deal. All right, so that's it for the caulking on this side. So I'm just gonna finish up the rest of the wall, and then it's painting.